What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Team Fish Knuckles YouTube channel. For those who have been fans of the Team Fish Knuckles YouTube channel for a long time, this is what we originally started with, was regionals, questions, and answers. We interviewed state champions and city champions and stuff like that. We haven't done this in forever, and I really want to get back to it and start, talking about regionals and questions and discussions and stuff like that we haven't really talked about in forever. And so what I did is I reached out to people that are going to Salt Lake City. All these players have Worlds invites or have or had Worlds invites, so they can answer pretty much everything and give it a lot of experience of what's going on. So what we'll do is introduce everybody. So Cyrus, we'll kick off real quick and introduce yourself.
I'm Cyrus Davis. I've been playing since 2012 when I was in juniors. I have my invite already for this year's Worlds. I'm ranked top 100 internationally. I'm top 5 in Canada, and I'm sponsored by Atlas Collectibles.
Very cool, very cool. All right, Evan, how about you?
Hi, I'm Evan Campbell. Qualified for Worlds 2 times previous to this year. 455 out of 500 for this year currently. Been playing the game now since 2008.
Jeez. Okay. Evan said I'm on one step. I'm going to say 2008 now. Okay. All right. So, Nick, how about you?
I have been playing competitively since the 2015-2016 season. I'm a former U.S. national champion. I've qualified for 3 world championships, and I'm at 485 out of 500 for this year because I thought I was going to be able to do a league challenge to finish on my invite back in 2020. But it's fine. Everything's fine. We'll get there. Otherwise, I am a Metafy.gg coach as well.
Oh, there we go. And we have a Metafy tournament going on right now too that Evan and Cyrus playing in. So if they seem distracted, it's because they're kicking butt right now. All right, Kevin, how about you?
I'm Kevin Baxter. I've also been playing since 2012. I have my Worlds invite for this year. It'll be my 7th Worlds that I've played in, so looking forward to that. Have not really played much online this year, last year, so kind of ready to get back into the IRL stuff.
There we go. I think the big thing too, nobody asked questions about this, and I feel like Kevin's probably the best one to answer some of this stuff that I might randomly throw in there, is there's a GLC tournament that's happening.
Oh yeah. I can talk all about GLC.
Yeah, that's Salt Lake City, and I feel like Kevin probably has the most experience of everybody. I'm just going to take a stab and say that's probably true. So, but let's just start this off right at the back. Let's just go if somebody right at start, if somebody was all right, what do I play for Salt Lake City? That's what they're here for. What should they play? Evan, if you had to pick one deck to play right now for Salt Lake City, what would you tell people to play?
I would go with whatever is the most consistent for them, but as far as just deck overall, I would choose Mew VMAX personally.
All right. How about you, Cyrus? What would you pick right now if you had to pick one?
Yeah, I mean, if the event was tomorrow, I would just play Mew. Probably with Pokemon Catcher just to improve my mirror matchup a little bit. But overall, I mean, especially if you're not sure, if you're still undecided, if you're not confident in anything, Mew, you just can't really go wrong with it. It sort of can beat anything.
Okay. And how about you, Nick? Same thing or something different?
Yeah, I'm going to have to fully agree with Cyrus there. Play Mew VMAX, specifically the catcher version. I think the catchers give you an upper hand in a lot of matchups. And, I mean, it's the safest pick by far right now in this format.
I got you. And then how about you, Kevin? Same thing as everybody else, or are you different?
Well, I don't own the cards from Mew because I didn't really play Infusion Strike. I don't really plan on buying the Mew cards either. But I own Arceus's, so that's kind of where I'm at this point. Probably playing Arceus of some flavor. We'll see exactly what the partner, if any, there will be for it. But yeah, I proxied up Mew the other day and started running hands with it, and I was like, oh man, this deck is pretty good.
And I would also throw in there Mew VMAX is probably the deck. If you're what deck do I play? Okay, it's 100% Mew. That is the deck. I mean, if you look at, I think it's Brisbane is how you say it. I heard
Brisbane,
Mitch. Well, I heard Mitch say Brisbane for some reason. I was like, is it Brisbane or is it Brisbane? I don't know. I don't know if he's just messing with us. But it was just Mew and Arceus, and that was it. And I was like, okay, maybe it's just first regionals. Who knows? Okay, so if you're here for just that question, there you go. Bam. Mew VMAX is the answer. All right, let's start answering some other stuff. So the really good question that somebody asked is like, how do you find a group of players to test with, right? So you have your friends and whatever. Your friends, they might not be the best test group, but is it always like your friends are your test group, or do you actually like? How do you find like, all right, this is my core group of test people? We'll start with Nick first.
I think it's a pretty interesting question. I think everyone starts off by finding their test group by just like going to League, which I know some places aren't doing League right now because of COVID, obviously. But the best place I've found is just like I went to League and I made friends there. In general, your testing group are also going to be your friends because you're going to enjoy playing with them. Otherwise, I've found testing groups just from going to big tournaments, participating in the online community, making friends that way, and then reaching out to people or having people reach out to me and be like, hey, I'm going to this tournament. What do you think is going to do well in this tournament? Maybe we should try playing this deck or something. So yeah, I would say just, go out, make friends, enjoy Pokemon. You'll find the testing group.
There we go. How about you, Evan? You got anything to add to that one? And
So for me, League has been a huge thing for just finding testing groups and stuff. Since more events have been online recently, just hopping in different Discords as well has been a huge help.
I got
Just
you.
from all the limitless events, you can find about anybody to test with through that.
And I think that's something interesting too, because like this is like the first regionals I think that were like Limitless has played like a big part of. Because like before, I don't remember like a big online tournament where you can just like see results every day. Like every day, there's a new tournament. You can see like whatever deck is winning, and you can talk to these players and like find out who they are like really quick. Cyrus, do you have anything to add to that too?
So I would say like League, and obviously like since the League Cups and challenges too, although they won't be coming back this year, is a great way to just meet people that you can test with in person. Obviously, I know there are a lot of like Discords. I know the Full Grip Games or like the Tricky Gym Discord, I think, has people can play like webcam games against each other there a lot. I know some of my friends do that. So that's a good way to just, if you just want to play some games at home, and maybe you don't have people around you that that you can play with, you can always like jump in somewhere like there. Playing in online tournaments is a good way to test. And like the last resort, or if you're just looking for like very premium testing, I would recommend, if you can afford it and or you're maybe are going to like a regional or something, coaching is a great way to find a testing partner. It's a little makeshift, but I know Nick coaches, I coach, Medify has lots of other wonderful coaches. And that can be a really good way to find just sort of like a cream of the crop testing partner, I guess.
Okay. And how about you, Kevin? Anything else to add to it?
I think they pretty much covered it. Yeah, the old way was just go to locals, and play against people and talk mid rounds or whatever. I do know like a lot of the Discords have really lively chats and some video calls, stuff like that. But yeah, I think they pretty much got it.
Yeah, and I think one more thing to add too is like outside of like locals and stuff too, as you go to like tournaments, you're gonna eventually find people that you just click with. Like Kevin, for example, like we're nowhere near close to each other, but I would consider like Kevin like one of my testing group people, like, or at least somebody I theorize and test with. So like going to just like big regionals like this week in Salt Lake City, you could find somebody that you click with, and like maybe it's your opponent or something, and then y'all just like start talking and stuff like that. Because I know I've made friends just by my opponent, just talking to him and like having fun during the match and stuff like that. Then afterwards you start talking. So that is something to keep in mind too as well. I think. So this is a good question. Is it important to test and theorize into the last minute, or is it better to settle on a deck list hours, even days before? And I know all of us have probably done this before. We'll have like this like last minute theory and like, let's add, one of something. Let's go like theorize and not even test it. Would you ever recommend that from the experience, or would you always go like, hey, I'm going to keep with this deck system. We'll keep it what I've tested. And let's go with Kevin first.
Yeah, I think it heavily depends on your just general experience in the game. The longer you've been playing, the more decks you've seen, the more you know what would and wouldn't work. I would say the newer you are, the earlier you want to have your deck choice locked in. You might not need all 60 cards necessarily, And you could probably switch up the last couple tech slots at the last minute if you really, think the meta is going to shift from what you thought it was. But yeah, I would try to lock in as soon as you can. I have not found a ton of success switching major aspects of a deck last second. Usually just reps with a good solid list is the best way to do decently at a regional.
Got you. And how you, Evan? You got anything to add to that?
Me, I normally try and lock in my same, let's say 58 the week prior. You go ahead and just test the consistency factors. That way, if I want to make a change to the consistency, if I see I'm not getting the test hands or the results I want to by then, I know, okay, I might need to add a few more, just let's say search cards or draw cards, depending on what the deck does.
Okay.
So just like that, I always try and lock in to say, hey, I got 2 cards for flex spots at the end. That way I know if I'm not getting the hand I want opening 90%, 80%, whatever I want to try for at the time, then I need to change up something. It's not performing to what it should.
How about you, Nick?
I would agree with a lot of what Kevin said. I think it's as a newer player, it's good for you to lock in early. That being said, my first ever regionals, I was up until 4 a.m. the day before testing and making my deck, and I got top 4 at it. So like, I don't know, sometimes you do crazy stuff and it works. But I'd say with the last minute tech things, you want to make sure that your techs make sense. And you have an exact reason for why you're playing it. And honestly, whenever you build a deck, you should have an exact reason why you play every card. But like, for example, maybe you're thinking, okay, well, big charms are going to be really relevant on Arceus V-Star, and my math really is going to benefit if I play Tool Scrapper to get rid of their big charms. And then that's a valid reason to play that tech. But if you're just thinking, well, people play a lot of tools, so I'm going to play Tool Scrapper, that's not going in depth enough to warrant playing that tech. Like, if it's not going to be relevant to you, then don't play the tech, essentially.
Got you. And then, sorry, so I'm going to switch up a little bit because, like, what Nick was saying. So, like, when you're talking about techs and include them last minute, like, so now we got this new online tournament, and now you're like, all right, my deck is good for this, but all of a sudden, like, a deck does really good online. Would you, like, include any cards to try to counter that, thinking, like, oh, all of a sudden these people are going to start playing it? Or would you, like, not even consider that as a tech, like, to try to beat that with certain deck that just won?
Online, if it's like a surprise deck, like if the event I'm playing in is another online event, sure, maybe I would, like, people online kind of switch decks pretty quickly, so maybe I would tech for it immediately after. As far as going from an online event to an IRL event, I don't think that's going to transfer over at all. I don't, if Jolteon suddenly takes 4 out of the 8 top 8 spots at an event on the Friday night before Salt Lake City, I'm not going to assume that I'm going to play against a bunch of Jolteon the next day because it's still not that popular. I'm going to assume that most people should probably have their deck choice locked in before then anyways. As far as like last minute techs in general go, I think that like you sort of, especially if you are on the more competitive side, maybe you know a lot of competitive players, once the night before the event and even like a couple days before the event, a lot of time you can get a lot of information about what other testing groups are sort of bringing to the event, and that can sort of skew your idea of what the meta is going to look like, especially for day 2. So I can see, I very much agree with Evan's, like 1 or 2 cards, 1 or 2 flex spots. My best regional result, top 4 regional, was I added a Wobbuffet for the Blastoise matchup last minute. I wasn't expecting a lot of Blastoise beforehand. I was playing Zorogarb. But the night before, I was hearing a lot of hype about Blastoise, so I just threw in a Wobbuffet to shut down the turn 1 Archie play as long as I went first. And it won me 3 games against Blastoise in day 2 because a lot of the top players were bringing Blastoise to the event. And so that sort of thing, if you just have like one card for a specific matchup that you sort of decide last minute whether or not you want to tech for, that can make sense. I do think you should, like everyone was saying, have your like consistency base already locked in before the event. Know what deck you're playing. One or 2 card changes is fine, but like Nick was saying, you want to really know what you're adding, and you need to really understand what your last minute cut is there. You really need to understand what that's going to do to all of your other matchups to remember how impactful that card that you're cutting was.
I got you. And I think another thing too to add on is like for new players, if I wouldn't suggest bringing like all your cards with you. Like don't bring like 10 different decks with you. Like I know now I'll just like bring like one deck with me if I have that chance and just like okay, I'm playing this deck. Or I'll reach out to somebody like, "Hey, what do you think we should play this weekend?" And like maybe these two decks and that's all I'll bring because I know I'll get into last minute mode like Nick said and like all of a sudden I'll bring like I don't know, like let's like this format like a all right, Mew and Arceus, and I'll bring Ice Rider, and all of a sudden, like, oh, I see an Ice Rider, and like, oh, maybe Ice Rider's a play, and I'll like, I'm the kind of person who would definitely like, if I see a deck last minute, I'm jumping on it, like I don't care, like I'm switching if I see one deck do good, so I try to like limit my like options. So. I don't know what anyone else says.
I always love seeing the classic Facebook post from you. Just I have this tournament this weekend and I haven't tested. What should I play? That's the Josh Marking special.
I mean, like the funny thing is too is like 99% of the time is like remotely true because like I don't have time to test because like I'm working and then I'm not working. I'm recording YouTube videos, so I'm never testing. So that's where like a lot of my decks do come like the Friday before. I'm very bad at that, but that's just how I've always been. For a very long time, obviously, like you said, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is a good question. So Brisbane, will the meta look similar, or will it be like totally different? Like if Mew wins Brisbane, so will Gengar come out and like all of a sudden like Gengar is a play, or like do we think it's gonna like flop at all or stay the same? Let's go with Kevin first. Let's see what he thinks.
So Australia is kind of weird because it's on the smaller side. Salt Lake, I think, has like 600 plus people registered already. So the size does kind of affect it. There's a lot more room for non-top decks to like be played, first of all, and then also like do well. I would expect the core to be the same. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of Mew, a ton of Arceus. They're going to do well. Going to be a bunch of them both in day two. There's going to probably be more room for the less popular stuff to sneak in there, have somebody have a good run. I'd not expect a huge shift though, especially with how just good the two decks are. I don't think it's going to be a complete overhaul in 1 week.
Got you. How about you, Cyrus?
Yeah, I actually, when I read this question originally on the Twitter, I did some research. I looked at old events where there was a regional the week before and a regional the week after, and saw how the top eights differed. And in formats like this, where there's clearly one or two very, very dominant decks, usually those decks actually did were even more dominant the following week. In a meta like this, the people who before Brisbane were like, I'm gonna play Mew for Salt Lake, aren't all of a sudden now gonna be like, oh no, everybody knows about Mew. Like they were expecting everybody to be hard countering them anyway, so it's not gonna affect their deck choice that much now that it's taking 4 of the top 8 spots at Brisbane. If anything, I think the only way, especially now after seeing the Brisbane top 8, it could really affect their results. I could see a little bit more people feeling more confident in Arceus now that it's had IRL success at a regional. So you could see people who weren't as confident in Arceus before now solidify that as their deck choice. Obviously, people who were probably already considering it. But I think our metagame at Salt Lake will look very similar to Brisbane in like just very, very dominated by Mew and Arceus. I think we could see maybe a few more people try sort of like a deck that hard counters just those two. You see those like Zoro toolbox decks that have fighting attackers and dark attackers. I could see maybe people feeling a little bit more confident in that, seeing just how streamlined the Brisbane meta was. But otherwise, I don't really see Brisbane affecting the Salt Lake meta that much.
I got you. How about you, Evan? You still on the same pace as everybody else, or you think it's going to switch any?
For the most part, yes. I saw that Arceus Inteleon Moltres was doing well at Brisbane as well. That deck was previously not as much talked about. So I think that could actually change. You'll have more dark Arceus versions, essentially. To where you're going to have more dark. That way, seeing that you took 4 of the top 8 spots, I think it'll just shift to more of those type builds.
Okay, I got you. And finally, how about you, Nick? You think anything's going to switch up or no?
Probably not. I agree a lot with what Cyrus said about how people that were planning on playing Mew are probably still going to play Mew this for Salt Lake, and people are kind of reassured that Arceus can do well in a very Mew heavy meta. I also wanted to point out that I feel like trying to build decks to counter like the top like 1, maybe 2 decks isn't always the best idea going into regionals, because like Kevin said, there's a lot more variations for people to play random decks. And if you play a deck that hard counters Mew but loses to pretty much everything else, like you're probably going to end up going like 6-3, which isn't day 2, right? Because you'll play against those random decks that aren't Mew, and you'll have a hard time. So I think when you're thinking about trying to counter the meta, you got to remember you're countering the whole meta, not the top meta deck.
Yeah, and just to add on, like Nick said, like, and Kevin said, we're gonna go from regionals that was like what, maybe 200 people or something like that, to regionals that's
150, I think.
Yeah, 150. Yeah, so like less than 200 players, and now you're gonna head into regionals that's like over 600. You're gonna find like more players that are gonna be like more open to play like random stuff too. And if your deck counters Mew and Arceus, that's cute. But like if your deck auto loses to like Malamar or something, or Durant or whatever, like now you're in a bad situation. I was in this one Twitch stream, I think it was Amy's, and they were like just making this meme of like, we'll just counter the counter, the counter, the counter, and like you don't know what the meta is anymore. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but I think
Could I add
something.
on to that?
Everybody just plays the counter to everything.
Could I add on to that?
Yeah, for sure.
I think what people, if you're looking to play like an anti-meta deck, I played a lot of control at regionals and stuff like that. You got to really, with online events, we can do this a lot more. I used to do it for expanded because the metagame doesn't shift as much between regionals as it does with standard. But with the amount of online events we have in this format, you can sort of do it with standard, where you can sort of break down percentages based on like the limitless deck percentage, how many of each deck you should expect to play. 20% is a lot. Mew is at about 18% on limitless right now. It maybe hits 20 for Salt Lake. But 20% is still only likely to hit the deck 2 or 3 times on the day. And Arceus, you're probably only likely to hit 1 or 2 times on the day, in day 1. So if you're building a deck that only beats Mew and Arceus, that's not even half of your games, most likely, maybe about half of your games. So it just like Nick was saying, it's not the best idea to just counter the top of the metagame. Most regionals, you're probably going to hit 7 different decks in day 1. Obviously there'll be outliers. Some people are just going to hit Mew all day. Some people aren't going to hit any. But in general, you should probably just be expecting to hit 2 or 3 Mew.
Yeah, that's a good thing to point out too, because like we keep talking about, like we think Mew is going to be everywhere, but it will be like you said, a good percentage, but you're not guaranteed to hit it like 5 or 6 times or even 7 times, and your deck can't beat the other decks. You're going to be in trouble. Now this question wasn't asked, but keep talking to Arceus and Brisbane. I think one thing that Salt Lake City might do that Brisbane didn't do, I guess we kind of saw it with like the Moltres like dark build, is I'm curious to think like, will there be another Arceus deck that comes out that nobody expects? Because it kind of reminds me of like Zorak. Like every different regionals, there was like a new Zorak variant. There was like Glisspot, and okay, now there's Lycanroc. Okay, now there's a Garbodor variant. Like, are we in the same format where Arceus can like have like all these different forms? We'll go with you, Evan. Will Arceus have like a new partner at Salt Lake City or no?
I know the group I normally test with, we decided to go ahead and try that late night this past time. We tried Arceus Malamar, and I had a friend that had really good success with that. They got top 16 out of it.
Okay, and like I think that's so cool.
So basically, you would just Marty your opponent's path lock and snipe a card out of their hands. Is what the ideal plays were for it.
I like it. I could dig it. How about you, Kevin? You think there'd be a new Arceus deck that could come out of regionals?
Yeah, potentially. It depends on what like established players are going to be testing. And actually, funny enough, from what I've seen at least, and I don't pay a ton of attention, a lot of people are trying all the different crazy techs with Arceus, and then like realizing it's just less consistent than straight Arceus. And so I'm kind of seeing the opposite, where everybody's just kind of converging on just straight Arceus is the way to go, because like the other partners aren't as good as a 310 HP 2 prize Pokemon. So it's kind of weird. There's definitely going to be people trying stuff. Maybe there's something we haven't thought of yet that could just be really good. But yeah, I think a lot of straight Arceus is what we're going to see do well for the most part.
How about you, Nick? You think any of the Arceus are gonna pop out or nah?
I think Arceus does kind of have that same Zoroark effect where it can be paired with a lot of different things, and I think especially for like Salt Lake, there's a decent chance you play against an Arceus deck that plays a VMAX that you have not seen in a while, like Malamar VMAX. Like I've seen people build like Arceus Delmise VMAX, stuff like that. I personally have built Arceus Gyarados VMAX just because like you can like Arceus enables you to play a lot of crazy VMAXs that you couldn't play before. So I could definitely see Arceus coming up with new partners as time goes on. But I also agree with Kevin. It's very interesting that a lot of top players have just kind of converged on the idea that straight Arceus V-Star is consistent. It does 180 damage a turn, and yet have a 310 HP 2 prizer, and that's very strong. So I could definitely see things getting changed up with Arceus V-Star, people finding different partners for it. But if we're looking at Brisbane results, most of the Arceus decks are just straight Arceus with Inteleon.
Yeah. How about you, Cyrus? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think they're all good points. You know, Arceus Malamar I think is actually very solid. I think you can do that with a lot of different VMAXs. Make your game plan. Obviously, Malamar does it the best because you have your weakness against Mew, and you get the hand disruption a little bit. But I've seen people play Arceus Tabu Koko. I've seen people play Arceus Delmise, and they're all trying to do the same thing against Mew, sort of that sort of mid game Marnie path, and hope it sticks. Ultimately, the biggest thing that's hampering people from experimenting with Arceus, I think, is Mew. People just want to make sure their list beats Mew, which sort of makes them not want to test partners that aren't helping with the Mew matchup. But I think even at Salt Lake, Arceus will be very diverse. We're not incredibly likely to see something new, I don't think. That's mostly just because of the nature of how quickly things get discovered with online events. There's an event, like multiple events in this format every single day. A lot of online players that aren't going to regionals and don't have any reason to hide what they're testing and are just playing it in online events. It means that things are being tested way more often and way more likely to be discovered. Obviously, the most likely chance that we are to see a new successful variant is if some top group of players is experimenting with something really weird that we haven't seen before and just bringing it to Salt Lake. But overall, I think we'll relatively see more of the same do well.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that too. Like you said, we're in the like the meta now, where like every night there's 5 different regionals online that are happening, and people are just playing whatever the heck they want to, because like it doesn't matter if they lose. Like who cares? Like, I mean, you can sit at home now and play regionals like in like I don't know 2 hours compared to like 10 hours. So why not? But I think it is cool that like we went from Arceus to Duraludon. Like, okay, this is the best deck. Like, oh, let's go. And all of a sudden it's like, no, let's just go like Arceus and just do Arceus, and that's it. So
Delmise.
Arceus Delmise. Yeah, there we go. All right, so most underrated card going to Salt Lake City. Let's go with Cyrus first.
Well, I mean, I'm playing Donphan Darkbox in a tournament right now, so I actually think it's pretty good. It's not my idea. I saw it do well in an event yesterday. The Donphan is just one-shots Arceus pretty easily. It helps you with your Natus matchup. It's good against Gengar. So I'm honestly gonna have to say Donphan's the most underrated card. If you're having trouble with your Arceus matchups and you're planning on playing Darkbox, try a Donphan in there.
I'm gonna have to look that card up. I don't know what you're talking about.
It does one.
Is it the Earthquake one from Vision
Yeah.
Voltage?
Yeah,
120
Voltage.
Earthquake.
120 for one fighting.
All right. I mean, yeah.
How does
Can
it?
one shot an Arceus?
How does it handle
I like it.
Dunsparce? You just like bring it up and smack it, I guess.
We'll figure that out later.
That's for later. We don't worry about
Yeah, quick shooting.
All right, Nick, how about you? Any underrated card people should know about?
that. I mentioned this earlier, but honestly, I feel like Tool Scrapper is kind of an underrated card right now. With how reliant Arceus V stars are on hitting for 310 or like having 310 HP, or just bringing it down to 280 can be very relevant. And also just getting rid of choice belts, like if you're playing like Mew VMAX or Arceus V Star, whatever, like making sure your opponent does 30 less damage is also very relevant. So I think Tool Scrapper is a very, very good tech card that not a lot of people are playing.
Got you. How about you, Kevin?
Hard to really call this card super underrated because there's a ton of decks playing it. But I think it's just that good. Is Path to the Peak. I think that's going to be the story of regionals. It seems to be the least amount of deck slots you can commit to something to have a real impact against Mew. Is like if you can stick a path, either like if you just go turn one path and they don't have a stadium, or just like mid game Marnie path. It's the way that most decks that can't just race Mew, because like nothing can really race Mew, will have a chance against Mew. So I think there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of paths played at Salt Lake, and just kind of hope for the best.
On top of that, Kevin, are you playing Path and Arceus? Is that what's happening right now?
Yeah, that's the thing now. Like, yeah, you have a busted ability, and you don't care. You just turn one path because, like, maybe Mew won't draw cards this turn, and I'll figure it out later.
All right, Evan, how about you?
To bring up the same card again, Malamar VMAX. Just the more I test it, the more I actually like it.
I love it. Man, I know it's not an answer at all, and it's a bad choice. I'm going to go Entei. I don't know why. I just really love that deck, and it's terrible. Don't play it, but like if I was going to regionals, that's the card I'm playing. I don't know why. It's so much fun. Okay, so this is a kind of interesting question because we're talking about regionals, but they ask, what is the World's Open? Do you think will happen again this year? The first question, can non-qualified world attendees play in it? Yes, I know that answer. But we'll get Kevin, what is World's Open, and do you think it'll happen again this year?
Yeah, so in past years, the Open, or whatever you want to call it, at Worlds has been a regional payout, at least for championship points. I don't think they have prizes, but it's just a regional championship points side event, essentially, during like day 2 of Worlds. Yeah, you can show up without having a Worlds invite and just go play in that. I've played in it a couple of times. It's a really cool thing to do if you're already at Worlds. They have not announced that for this upcoming Worlds, so I would not at this moment book a flight to London in the hopes that that event happens. If you happen to be going to Worlds anyway, like whether you have your invite or you're just going because you want to, that would be a nice perk. It's a really cool event. They have had issues in the past with like getting into it. It's kind of like a midnight release, like the first 200-300 people that click the button first get in. So again, I wouldn't like put your whole, strategy of going to Worlds just in playing in that event if they haven't even said that they're having it. So yeah, but it's been cool in the past.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add to that? I know it's kind of like a very.
I guess I'll add a little bit. Also, usually with this tournament, it seems that TPCI likes to test different tournament structures for it. Like we've seen a lot of interesting structures where we've had like asynchronous top cut, not necessarily day 2, but but just going to that asynchronous top cut. So yeah, it's an interesting tournament. It's cool. I've played in it before, but yeah, otherwise I agree with what Kevin said.
Evan or Cyrus, you want to add anything to it or no?
If I'm not mistaken, the biggest difference between that two, it doesn't award cash payout compared to what regionals do, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct as far as I know.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, as far as if someone's wondering if they should play in it, if you're not going to Worlds otherwise, and you don't live in, like, if you don't live in Europe, because that's where Worlds will be, if you're going for fun and you can afford it, go for it. but it's going to be a pretty expensive regional if you live outside of Europe, and it's going to be a lot of very, very good players because everyone who didn't make day 2 of Worlds that played in day 1 is going to play in it, or try to play in it.
Yeah, the last one I played was the one in Nashville, and I remember me and my friend were like literally on the couch. I hit punch in, he hit punch in, and he didn't make it, but I did. And like literally, I imagine it's gonna be the same thing this year. I think the big thing is too is like they haven't even announced when Worlds is. Have they or no?
No, they haven't.
It's not even confirmed they're having Worlds yet. Come on, guys, we don't even.
I would say there's a good chance the event doesn't happen, just based on them trying to minimize the number of people in attendance for COVID reasons. But we'll see how things look closer to the day of the event, or if they announce something.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can agree with that. Just won't have it. Next question is let's throw this at Nick because he was looking for this. Speculations if challenges and cups will return for 2022 to 2023.
I'm guessing, assuming things go well and we don't there's not like a new COVID variant that comes out or something, you know, I'm guessing that they will bring them back. I think the reason why they didn't bring it back this year is because for regionals and internationals, they can have like a TPCI coordinator to make sure that COVID policies are being followed and being kept in place. But obviously they can't realistically enforce that at a local level. The only way they can force that is if somebody reports it at the local level. But I think people are not incentivized to do that because then there's a chance that they lose their locals, you know? So yeah, I think they probably will. I kind of wish that they would have brought it back for this year, or at least I think it's weird that with the world championship invite structure, I think a lot of people are in kind of a tricky spot with having just regionals and internationals, but not having locals. Like, for example, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I'm at 485 out of 500. Say I wasn't able to go to the regionals, and I was relying on a league challenge finish to finish out my invite, I would essentially just be screwed because there are no locals. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come out later saying, hey, we're going to actually lower the CP requirement for this year because there's no, like, we're missing half of quarter 3 and all of quarter 4 locals. But we'll see. But overall, I do think I'm guessing we will have locals next year.
I got you. Does anybody like disagree or want to add anything to that before I go on?
Taking things like one step at a time. I don't think they've like made a decision on that yet. They're just kind of focusing on regionals right now, and then hopefully they'll figure out a way to make worlds work and go from there. But their goal has to be that locals will come back at some point. It's a really big way to grow the game is just like have, you know, any local player that hasn't really gone to regionals or whatever can show up to a locals and have fun. So that's how a lot of players get into the game, and they want the game to grow. So like it has to come back at some point. But obviously they can't commit to that right now.
Yeah, and it go with what Kevin said too. Like how we said earlier, like your best testing group is your locals. Well, I recently moved during COVID. I have no idea who's even around me because we haven't had locals. Like I have no idea what the player base is at all. So I don't know. I'm ready for locals to open too, so I can figure out who's even around me that plays Pokemon because I don't know anybody here that plays Pokemon. Evan or Cyrus, do you want to add anything about? Do you think it will come back this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll come back for next season, not this season, for locals. Pretty much, I agree with everything that's been said, really. They already sort of announced that we wouldn't have them, so I wouldn't expect them before the end of this year, or this season. But I would expect them back for next season.
Yeah.
Personally.
And then let's go to Evan real quick. Let's say, do you think they're going to lower points requirements or they're keep it at 500?
I foresee them keeping it at the same. If not, they might increase regional payout, which they would have announced already. So I just foresee it being the same at 500.
Gotcha. How about you, Kevin? You think they're going to drop it or keep it the same?
It's tough because they have done both in the past. They have changed the requirement mid-year before, and they have also kept a difficult requirement for an entire year before. So it's hard to really say. It is kind of surprising that nothing's been announced on that front yet, especially since there's a regionals happening literally right now. So again, I wouldn't bank your whole strategy for the season on something that hasn't been announced yet. So like, if you're thinking, oh, I'm at 350, I have it, I don't have to go to regionals or whatever, like I wouldn't probably do that if your goal is to go to Worlds. But like, it could go either way.
Yeah, and like especially like a Nick's situation, like all of a sudden like Nick's like I gotta go to Salt Lake City, and then like 2 months later, like hey, just kidding, it's 400 now or something. Nick's like, what the heck, Pokemon? Like what's going on here?
I probably would still go anyway. I want to play Pokemon.
No, I got you.
Just go win Nats again. Like, how hard can it be?
Easy. I did it, so not that hard.
Dude, your same deck is like buildable now. You could build like Vespiquen. Come on now.
I know. I can play Wormadam and Mad Party. Easy. Bring it back, boys.
Okay.
That would be insane. You just like put the same architect over. Yeah, yep. It was good then. It's good now. Who cares? Whatever.
That would be an amazing story.
You got Ultra Balls back now. You're golden. It's pretty much the same format. Yeah.
Reprint Battle Compressor. We'll be good.
No, don't do it.
No, I would hate that. I would actually despise that.
How about you, Cyrus? You think they're gonna drop points at all or no?
I kind of feel like they will, but honestly, I personally kind of hope that they don't. But that's just because I already have my invite. It's easy to say I hope they don't, right? But
Cyrus gatekeeping me.
Yeah, sorry. I just don't want to see Nick there. Actually, that's my whole reason.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, no, I think they'll probably lower it. But like, just I don't know. They've been more gracious. I feel like since that one very difficult season, the 550-point season. I feel like they've been pretty gracious with that kind of stuff, and especially with COVID. I think it's like it's close. 60-40 maybe on them lowering it, in my opinion.
I think the one thing I want to add in too is like we kind of said it, like Pokemon kind of wants to keep attendance low too. So I can also see them like, hey, like we're keeping it 500. Sorry if you can't make it, but like, oh well, now it's more exclusive. I guess we have less players to worry about, So
it'll be interesting to see if they change the like day 1, day 2 thing at all, because like they originally they were going to do like 500 points day 1, right, and then like. I don't remember the exact structure, but like if you get some amount more points,
I don't think they announced exactly how many more points it was for that.
Right, I think that was like one of the early announcements in COVID or something. So that I expect will get definitely an announcement, like before too long. Is how the whole world's. They might just go to like the old Worlds format where it's just like day 1, day 2, and not have like the initial first day thing. But who knows?
Yeah, I'm guessing that they'll redact that 3-day structure thing because that was put into place. That was announced with the intention that locals would start back up in January, and now we're not having locals at all. So I'm guessing that will get redacted, but who knows? Maybe they'll still say like, if you get 800 points, then you automatically make day 2 or something. I don't know.
That's true. And so they haven't announced like day 2 is top 8 or top 32 yet. Like nothing's been said, or.
I don't think they've confirmed anything yet.
Gotcha. Okay. It's kind of a weird question. It says, advice for pursuing an invite if locals do not return? I guess go to a lot of regionals and win in IAC, I guess.
Yeah, I guess if you have 0 points right now, I guess I would say go to tournaments for fun. I wouldn't expect to get my invite unless you like win internets. If I'm being honest, like you'd have to have a crazy season to be able to get an invite from here with 0 points.
Yeah. Well, the thing they asked is like if league challenges and cups don't return for 2022 to 2023, is there any advice? Like, I still think it'd be really hard just to get it off regionals alone, but I could be wrong.
Well, if everybody has to get it off regionals alone, they'll make it work so that people can go to Worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could honestly see if in theory, if there are no locals in 2022, 2023, I would imagine they would lower the point requirement to like probably like 200 or something. Like straight up, just if you win a regionals, you get a world's invite. Good job. Because I mean, so many points come from locals that I think a lot of people tend to forget about. Like, I mean, when you get 15 points for winning league challenges, 50 points for winning cups, and then every iteration in between, it's like I think most people's invites are like 300 to 400 points from locals, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because I know, especially for me, like when I went for Worlds Invites, like it was always like I got to grind like all these cups or whatever. I just got to go because I only went to like 2 or 3 regionals because there's none around me. So
Yeah, the majority of mine was from cups.
So, all right. Cyrus, have you want to add anything about that?
No, yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think it's pretty tough.
all right. So this is an interesting question. I'll let Kevin answer this because me and him both know something personal. What happens if you can't pick up your swag bag for? It says regionals on Friday, but I think like you can probably pick it up on Saturday, like 100%. But Kevin, you want to add anything?
At regionals, at least the past couple that I remember, like they just kind of had a booth open the whole event, and just like at some point you just go over there and they check your name off and you get your stuff. So regionals, I really wouldn't worry about it. If you are talking about Worlds swag bag, I know if you really can't get there for like the check-in on Friday, you can try to send in a support ticket, get in contact with somebody over at Pokemon. And as long as there's like good communication, hey, I'm getting here at this time or whatever, that they probably will work with you on that. I can't guarantee any of that. I don't, I'm not involved with that obviously, but like I know of at least one instance where their flight was delayed. They weren't getting in until like early the morning of, and everything worked out because they talked to people at Pokemon. So they should be pretty lenient. It's not like they're gonna have their bag in the back, have your bag in the back, and you show up and they're like, no, you can't have it. they're pretty good people over there.
Yeah,
holding it hostage.
I kind of forgot too because at first it said swag bag, so in my head I thought Worlds. I forget that like at regionals now they give you like bags of like advertisements and stuff like that inside of it. So
not as extensive as the World's bag, but I mean you get like a mat and like a deck box sometimes.
So all right, let's go with Evan. It says, are there big signs with table numbers, or are there people who just point you to where your matches are, or how does it work? If you've never gone to regionals and you're like, how do I find out where my tables are? What happens there?
I would say with the RK9 system now, it makes things a whole lot easier as far as finding pairings to know what tables to go to. And normally they either have signs on the table themselves, and then you'll have the others to the side that say sometimes like you have table 1 through 30 on this one row, 2 or 31 through 60 on the next row. That kind of helps you out as well. But if you have any questions at an event, I would always recommend just asking staff there, because everybody that I met from the community so far is just super informal and nice and willing to help you out.
There you go. Yeah, and I think it's what new players have never are gonna have to deal with is like not dealing with RK9. Hopefully, we always have to deal with RK9.
Yes.
Has anybody been to? I'm trying to think. Cause Salt Lake City, do you know if it's RK9 yet or no?
We registered through RK9.
You registered through it, so.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, all right. Does anybody else want to add about table numbers or anything like that, or?
Yeah, I would say they generally like announce over the loudspeaker or something like, Masters TCG over here, video game over here, that kind of stuff. It's pretty hard to miss the tables that are being played at. I will say a good rule of thumb is follow the backpacks. If you're in the city of an event and you see a bunch of people with backpacks walking around, they're going to the Pokemon event, so just follow them.
All right. Okay. So let's see. All right. So I know we're playing in tournaments right now as we're talking. So let's start.
Evan and I are playing against each other right now. So
yeah, you kind of.
All right, somebody share your screen.
No, I'm losing. I do not play well.
All right, let's commentate it.
It gets paired while that. All right, so while they're playing, while they're playing, I'm gonna ask Nick this question: how early do you start prepping for regionals?
Honestly, it really depends. I think for Salt Lake, I guess I formally started prepping probably a week or two ago. But sometimes I'm prepping like the week of, just depending on like what local events I have going on and just how much I know the set. Like I think when a new set like Brilliant Stars comes out, you kind of have to start prepping a little bit earlier because you're just going to have less data to go off of. But like, say if there was a Fusion Strike regionals that happened like 3 weeks ago, it's like we would have been in Fusion Strike format for like 3 months almost at that point. It's like maybe a little bit less prepping at that point because you kind of know what the meta is like, you know how the decks work, things like that. You've probably already played the decks a lot. So maybe like a week or so, 2 weeks to prep for that. But yeah, so it really just depends on how comfortable you are with the format and how recent the format is.
Got you. And then Nick, do you play on online tournaments a lot or not? Not really.
I personally do not play in a lot of online tournaments. My locals, we have a local Pokemon Iowa Experience tournament circuit that we've been doing for a while. So I play in those, and I use that as my testing. But I don't really play in the online tournaments that much.
Gotcha. And how about you, Kevin? How early do you start prepping for regionals?
I start thinking about it as soon as I know I'm going. But as far as like, building a deck, testing it, usually a couple weeks out. So yeah, it kind of varies depending on how established the format is, like Nick said. So with a completely new format that obviously, Australia is going on right now, but other than that, hasn't been an IRL tournament for it. You want to put in more work than like if you're 2 months into a format that you've been playing the whole time, like you probably don't need to run a bunch of games with your same deck. But yeah.
Gotcha. I usually prepare the night before, if you're wondering. Usually that Friday night, I build a deck and cross my fingers and let's go. So
What should I play, guys?
yeah, what should I play? And somebody throws the best meme out there, we're playing it. So Evan and Cyrus, y'all still playing each other?
No, we're done.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we're done.
Oh, that didn't sound very good. All right.
A little sad.
All right, so these are good questions for Cyrus and Evan because obviously they play online tournaments a lot compared to Nick and Kevin. So not only how early do you start prepping for regionals, but can you use the new online like Limitless tournament to actually prepare for regionals, or is it still like you're just playing on the ladder essentially, like you can't really count this because you don't know, whatever kind of thing. So let's go with Cyrus first.
Yeah, I mean, so to talk about sort of like my prep routine for the event, as soon as I knew what the set was going to look like what Brilliant Stars was really going to look like, that's when I started like theorizing for the event. And then once the set came out, I built every deck I thought could be viable for the event. I test against myself a lot in my free time, so I like to have everything built and proxied up, just for playing against myself. And then I like to have my deck choice sort of locked in about 2 weeks before the event. But basically a month in advance is when I start really testing like a couple hours every day. 2 weeks before the event is when I start testing, like 4 to 5 hours every day. And then the week leading up to the event, I like to sort of test a lot those few days before I leave. And then, the day before I leave to the event, I'll play a bit with friends and stuff, but I try to relax more on my testing process then, keep my stress levels down until the event starts. As far as online events go, I mean, I've tried to use it for testing for Salt Lake a little bit. Basically, I mean, full disclosure, my top pick right now for Salt Lake is Mew, and it has been for a week or two now. But I really like Dark Box. I think it's really good, and it's obviously pretty hard to play. So I have used online events to sort of test everything that is not my top choice. That's also more of a result of Mew not needing to be tested as much as something like Dark Box or Arceus. But if I have an idea, I'll just jump into an online event with it quick. There's pretty much every few hours there's an online event starting, so it's significantly better than just jumping onto the ladder on PTCGO. So I think online events are very good for testing. Maybe if you're playing Jolteon for Salt Lake, maybe you don't play that in an online event, because I do think that if Jolteon is suddenly super popular online, it could affect metagames a little bit. And obviously Jolteon's deck that's very easily countered with Manaphy. But if you're playing Mew, where it's sort of not your top choice, it's just sort of a deck that you think could be good, and you just want to see if it's actually viable, put it through a quick League Cup size tournament. Online is very, very good for testing those sort of things.
I gotcha. And how about you, Evan? You want anything to that about preparing for regionals, or how early?
So for me, normally I like to start preparing the moment I know I'm going. Usually what I'll try and do is, especially now with all the limitless events, right? I try and look at the percentages, and let's say if I didn't know what deck I wanted to play at the start, well, I know Mew's always doing good now based off of that, right? I know it's probably a safe pick for anybody going to a regional. So I can look at that tool and just kind of go through and say, okay, these are the top, let's say, 6 decks, and I kind of know what to expect going from round to round. So those are going to be the decks I want to go and test against the most as well. And then I'll always want to test like the oddball, let's say bad matchups, especially type disadvantage matchups too. So if I'm playing Mew for an event, I'm testing the Dark Box, I'm testing E-turn, and try and figure out the lines of play to be able to turn your unfavorables to favorables, to where if you hit those at a regional, you're okay with it.
Gotcha. And just make sure we have everything tested out and ready to go, kind of thing. So
Right.
yeah. So, and I think one good thing about PTCGO2 compared to live is or in real life is you can play against your teammates and test those bad matchups like you're saying, or they're one of matchups. So that's something cool too. Instead of have to sleeve up Mad Party all of a sudden or something, you can just throw it online and just test against it or something.
Right.
So I'm gonna throw some just questions out here because we're at 58 minutes right now. So Cyrus, you talked about wall stall decks. Do you play stall decks? Is there any stall deck in the format right now that you would play for regionals?
No, not. I tested a lot of control for this event. I test a lot of control for every event, because when you do find the control list that can beat every top deck, it's you can replicate those sort of scenarios every single game consistently with your deck, and that's a very nice thing when you're playing 9 rounds of best of 3, to be able to replicate your win condition over and over and over again. But control, it just does not have a good answer for RCS right now. Obviously, Sander Wojcik is the pioneer of control in the modern era. It just always posts lists that tend to inspire what other people test with control. I saw him post a list of Wormadam to sort of try to knock out an RCS, but I just don't think it's very effective. There are a lot of RCS lists that aren't playing any non-Vs. So Altaria is an interesting option if you want to try that. But usually they're playing Quick Shooting Inteleon or B-Barrel. B-Barrel is an efficient enough attacker to get through an Altaria. And Inteleon, you do have a way to stop the quick shootings, but if they just boss your Gorbis over and over again, eventually it's going to be gone, and then they can just quick shooting your Altaria to death. So I test a lot of different tools to control. I just don't think you can make that consistently beat RCS variants, and I think that will lose you the event eventually. Once you factor in the other niche decks that you lose to, like Eternatus is very hard to build a control deck to beat. Victini you can't really beat because of Spreading Flames. It's just very, very difficult to try to build a control deck right now that can keep up with Mew, that's consistent enough to keep up with Mew, because sometimes your deck, if you try to put in too many tools, your deck just loses to Mew in the first few turns. That's an answer to RCS, and then also can keep up with all the other niche decks in the format. Control is very close. It's on the verge. We have a retreat lock in the Teddy Ursa for Darkness Ablaze that 1 energy stops your opponent from retreating. It's a very good card. But all in all, and we have Evotel. All in all, the deck just doesn't have enough tools to counter enough of the meta right now. You probably won't be able to make day 2 with a control list, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Does anybody else have anything to add in control? I don't know if anybody else tested or not. No? Okay. I know like first there was like people like winning with Durant, and that seems like the dial off like real quick. So like I don't know. That's the only thing I've kind of realized.
Yeah, I forgot about Durant because I don't really consider like the mill. I don't think Durant is very good. But there will be a lot of players who are probably newer to the game at Salt Lake. I think the game has gained a lot of players since COVID, and that probably might never have played against the mill deck in their life, right? I think that's why Durant has done well in some online events. A lot of these online players just literally have probably never played against mill before in their life. I don't think the deck beats Mew. I don't think it beats Arceus. I don't think it really like 100% beats anything. It can beat Mew for sure, but overall, I don't think the deck's actually very good. I think the results are coming from people like not necessarily knowing how to play against mill decks.
You just play against like a Mew player that drops all their genetics down like turn 1. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
let's not.
cards.
Now I'm gonna chromatic away all of my switching cards.
Yeah.
I do, and it's something we haven't talked about, but you bring up an interesting point too. With new players, and this is me like giving random advice, is like knowing when to scoop, because like an online tournament, you could just like play your, who cares, like you're gonna finish your game, but like I'm telling you guys, you're not gonna finish your 3 games in 50 minutes or whatever it is. Like it's not gonna happen. So, because people are going to forget how to shuffle too, and that's like I don't even know how to shuffle anymore. So, like it's been 2 years. So,
I honestly think that's going to be a big thing that we see at Salt Lake is a lot of players that are so used to online or have only played online, like are now playing IRL, and maybe they're not taking shortcuts for their actions, and maybe they're just playing slower. They're not used to shuffling. I can see a lot of ties happening because people are not playing fast enough or only finishing game 1.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I agree with that completely. I know that's not control, but does anybody else want to add into that kind of thing? Because especially like with new players, they've never experienced this before.
Yeah, I'd say do all your search actions at once and then shuffle after just to save time. If you're going to do stuff that it doesn't matter as far as sequencing is concerned, just do them all at once, to where if you want to do a quick ball, that way you don't have to sit there and shuffle in between each individual action.
Gotcha.
Yeah, as long as it's clear. I mean,
Right.
You lay down a quick ball, I'm getting this. Okay, lay down a VIP pass, I'm getting this. I wouldn't like throw 5 cards on the table at once and just be like, I'm getting stuff. But yeah, you can definitely like do it one after the other really quickly without shuffling each time.
Yeah, I would say you obviously don't want this to be the sole thing that decides what deck you play. But if you're not confident in your pace of play, maybe lean away from single prize decks like Dark Box and like the Zoro Toolbox deck. Those decks take a long time to finish 1 game, and you definitely won't finish 3 games. And especially if your goal is to sort of have a favored match against Mew against a lot of its bad matchups still takes like a 33% win rate to 40% win rate at worst. So if your game plan is to beat Mew and they manage to take 1 game out of the 3 on you and it goes to time, it's just a tie. You're going to tie every Mew you play. And they are likely going to take a game off of you because Mew is just that consistent, and a lot of the decks that counter Mew aren't very consistent. Definitely knowing when to concede early, especially with those kinds of decks, is super important. Beyond playing fast, it's like sometimes you have to concede within the first few turns if you want to have a chance at winning the next 2. But obviously, like, don't throw away a possible win, but you have to really analyze the board state and see, I'm too far behind at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill that you build up just from playing tournaments of best of 350, just playing it, how fast you need to play, how early you need to scoop, stuff like that.
Yeah, like Cyrus says, like as soon as you are starting to realize like the writing's on the wall that you're gonna lose in 2 turns, instead of like wasting those 2 turns, just go ahead and just scoop it up. You're like, okay, I've been checkmated. Like I can't win. Like there's no outs. Like just go ahead and scoop it up. Don't hope your opponent like disconnects or anything like that, because it's not going to happen anymore. So
disconnects IRL.
Malfunctions.
Somebody asked, why is the capacity so low at regionals right now? I don't know where you've been for 2 years, but I'm sorry. Okay, it's kind of a hard question to answer. What's the best Mew counter? Evan, is the best Mew counter dark, or is it something else? Is it peak like we've been saying, or is it something else that we've been missing here?
I would say for sure the most splashable by far is Path to the Peak, to where it can go into anything. That way you don't have to just stick to one type to have a counter to Mew. So I would say that one card alone, I wouldn't necessarily look at Dark because, like everybody else was saying earlier, if you stick to one type that's just a pure counter type, you might lose to the other decks in the meta because it might not necessarily have good matchup spreads against everything else, right?
I agree. Anybody else have an answer to like what beats Mew besides like peak or dark that we don't know about?
The Evil Toll's been pretty cool. I don't know if it like wins Mew, but it's neat. It helps. Like if they just blow up on turn 1 and get 3 fusion energy and don't have a backup plan, you just knock them all off. So I know a lot of people are experimenting with that Evil Toll, but yeah, Path I think is the easiest way to give yourself a better shot.
Mm-hmm. All right. So,
Yeah.
you're gonna say?
But I think Dark Box is the deck that has like I don't think that Dark Box consistently beats Mew. I think it's like obviously favored. But I think it's the deck that beats Mew with the best chance of beating other things as well. Like I think Dark is a very good in general against a lot of decks. It can struggle with Arceus variants, and it can struggle with Eternatus sometimes, but otherwise, I think it's very good against most of the field. But obviously, very very difficult to play. If like, I'd almost even say that like now might be too late if you aren't very experienced to just like pick up Dark Box. It's very hard to play. And honestly, even if I were playing it for Salt Lake, I'd still expect to probably misplay myself out of like at least one win over the course of the day. I think that Gengar, like just according to statistics, Gengar is the only deck with like more than like a 55% win rate against Mew. I mean, pretty much even Dark Box only has like a 55% win rate against Mew according to Limitless. Gengar is the if the only thing you want to do is beat Mew, Gengar is the best way to do it in my opinion. But Gengar I do think struggles against other stuff a lot. So.
Yeah, I was also on the Gengar hype train for a minute, and then I started playing against non-Mew stuff, and I was not on the Gengar hype train anymore. Real quick.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Nick, let's see if you can break this down. Can you explain the point system during regionals?
So like championship points or like
You know what?
or like
You know what?
match points.
I don't know. That's all they asked me. Hey man,
Do
balls.
both.
Do both. Balls in your
All
court.
right.
Whatever you want to
All
say, champion.
All right, let's start with match points. So in match points, just like at any local tournament or anything, you get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, 0 points for a loss. Your goal is to get 19 match points to qualify for day 2, which is typically a record of 6, 2, and 1 or better. That means 6 wins, 2 losses, 1 tie. A lot of times you'll see people intentionally draw at 6 and 2 just so that they're both guaranteed into day 2. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. Depending on how many players there are, it will kind of determine like what's going to be the cutoff for top 8. But that changes pretty much every regionals because that's based off of tie rates. Because obviously, if there's ties, there's less match points in the system because there's only 2 points added to the system instead of 3. So usually you will have to figure that out at the event and just try to find someone that is smarter than you and knows more about that. Usually people like Alex Szymanski is a great example of someone who knows a lot about that stuff. I would say Chris Szymanski, but he's always judging, so he's not really at liberty to say that stuff. Usually just trying to find someone that knows that stuff better than you is the best way to go if you're trying to figure out, like, can I ID to make top 8? or top 16 or top 32. And then otherwise for championship points, I know it's like 200 points if you win. I don't know the top 8 points. I know top 32 is like 60 championship points. Top 16 is 80. Top 8's probably like 100, something like that.
So.
Yeah,
100. Top 4 is probably around like 120, 125. Second's probably around like 160 or something.
Yeah, I think it should go down to top 128 getting points if I remember the kickers.
Yep. Yeah, usually we'll go down to top 128, where top 128 gets 40 championship points. If there are 800 or more players, and top 256 gets championship points, and I believe they get 30. But keep in mind that you can still get championship points without making day 2. Like day 2 will often have there will always be players that get championship points that don't make day 2. So even if you go like 6-3 and you lift day 2, you probably got top 128. So like you still want to play out even if you are doing worse than X 2-1, because you still want to try and get championship points.
When you go back to good days where 6-3 made cut.
Usually for 128, 5-3-1 is going to be the bubble. So 5-2-2, you're probably safe for top 128. 5-3-1, you're like really risking it most likely.
Jeez.
So if your goal is just to get points.
That's crazy. It's like because I haven't played regionals that long, but like it's crazy that 6-3 doesn't make day 2 anymore. It's like it's wild. It's wild.
It's a whole new world.
I don't know. Scary. It's a scary world out there. Okay, so let's see. Is there any reason to play a deck that isn't Mew? Okay, instead of asking this question, is there any reason to play a deck that isn't Mew or Arceus? Let's say Pokemon for some reason just banned Mew and Arceus right now, and you had to play a deck. What deck would it be? Kevin, let's go with you.
Wow, yeah. I don't know. The Rapid Strike Malamar seems kind of neat. I guess that would be my answer. That seems to be, in my opinion, the single prize deck that has a decent shot of running hot and doing well.
All right. How about you, Evan?
I would go with for sure Rapid Strike. To me, on paper, it just has a lot of good matchups with how the math lines up.
There we go. How about you, Cyrus? Deck playing right now of Arceus. I think I ban.
I'm going to say Shadow Rider because I think a lot of people are going to say Rapid Strike.
And
I think Shadow Rider becomes the best way to beat Rapid Strike after Mew's gone.
How about you, Nick?
I'd probably agree with Cyrus. I think Shadow Rider is actually a really good deck if Mew is banned. I would also say Single Strike is really good. Single Strike has a lot of good single prizers to attack with, and then can kind of later switch into bigger guys with Umbreon VMAX and Single Strike Urshifu VMAX. I think that's also a very solid deck.
There you go. So I thought it was interesting because it's a reason to play any deck that isn't Mew or Arceus. Probably not, but they got banned. Yeah, sure, why not? I'll still throw Entei out there, man. That was an Entei line. I don't know what it is. Okay, so outside of the regionals, there is like side events, and they did announce there was a GLC tournament. I don't know if anybody else has participated in GLC stuff outside of Kevin. Am I wrong?
Nope.
All right, Kevin. What's your best advice for a GLC person going to the side event? I guess.
If you've never played it at all, a lot of people jump in the Tricky Gym Discord, talk about GLC decks. If you watch Andrew's stream, he'll usually play once a week some GLC. If you don't know anything about it, you can go to gymleaderchallenge.com. That has all the rules and a couple of starter lists that you can work off of. But basically, it's all single prize Pokemon. No rule boxes are allowed. Your deck has to be all the same type of Pokemon, and it's singleton, so you can only have one copy of each card besides basic energy in your deck. Those are the major rules. Yeah, it's a really cool format. Games take a little while because it's all one prize at a time, unless you're like playing something cool like Guzzlord or Raikou Amazing Rare or whatever. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. You get to play cards you've never really thought you would play before, You got to see a lot of cool combos, different types. It's really balanced as far as like what types can do well. I personally have been working on like fire, dragon, grass as my main three, but water's really good, psychic's really good. Dark just won, JW won with dark this past event. So yeah, I would recommend getting into it if you can. You don't have to necessarily build like the optimal GLC deck to have fun with the format. You can just kind of see what you got, maybe buy a few cards, and then the cards are generally pretty cheap because again, they're not really played in standard. So yeah, it's a lot of fun if you want to try it out. Apparently, they're doing during day 2. They're running a side event, like a major side event for GLC at Salt Lake. So this should be a lot of fun if you don't make day 2 and you have a GLC deck. You want to run that? Should be a lot of fun. I think there's also running like 8-person side events like throughout the whole event if you just kind of want to throw some games. So yeah, I would recommend picking it up if you want to play more Pokemon and are kind of bored with standard. It's a really cool format.
Yeah, and on top of that too, like Kevin said, if you're nervous about going to regionals and you're like, oh, I'm gonna do bad, what am I gonna do afterwards? There's always side events. There's always vendors there. Like Kevin said, GLC is really like inexpensive, and I imagine some of the vendors there might have some of the GLC cards, maybe because you look some crazy cards they might not carry. But so that's all I have for Salt Lake City. I'm gonna do something very weird because like regionals doesn't do this anymore, and we kind of talked about it just a little bit. This is for next format, 2022 to 2023. Will regionals have a will expanded have a rotation or not? Let's just start thinking about that real quick, because I think that's a really good question that nobody really asks anymore. I always love expanded; it's my favorite format to this day still. Let's go, Evan. Do you think expanded will have a rotation finally or no?
Personally, I could actually see them doing away with expanded as a format as a whole, especially given that all the regionals for this year are all standards. And with them trying to implement maybe some GLC, maybe we could actually see a different format that's not expanded come out of the works. Hopefully, GLC could actually be a sanctioned format, and that would be really cool to see.
I got you, and that's kind of the reason why I brought it up too. Is because like there's no expanded tournaments. Like they just said, hey, let's forget it. So, Cyrus, how about you? I know you talked about expanded, talked about Zork and everything like that. Is expanded rotating, going away? Is it coming back next year?
So, I mean, if it comes back, I'm also not totally confident in it coming back. If it does, I think they would do a rotation. I don't strongly believe that. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, but I kind of would expect them to do a rotation when they bring it back, personally. Especially with I know they've said they're going to incorporate Black and White on eventually in PTCG Live, but with PTCG Live coming out and only having up to Sun and Moon back to Sun and Moon right now, I could see them even just for simplicity's sake rotating all the way up to Sun and Moon on, and that makes it super easy for new players to get into the format as well, which would be a big incentive for them. Personally, I'd actually kind of like to see it rotate. I like expanded a lot, but it'd be nice to have a new fresh format. But yeah, I either see them bringing it back with the rotation, or just keeping it gone. It'd be nice if they just brought it back normally as well. I'd still enjoy that, but personally, that's what I think is most likely.
Yeah, and like you said too, like PTCG Live not having it was like also like another thing I was like thinking about. Like this is why expanded's not going to be a thing. Kevin, what about you? Oh, sorry.
They need to do some serious work on expanded if they want to have it like official events. Whether that is a rotation and just like getting a bunch of old sets out of there, or like an extensive ban list, I guess, if they want to like try to take some shots in the dark at what needs to be banned. I personally think they will not bring it back for official events next year. But who knows? I don't really want it to come back. I think I don't hate like the cards necessarily. It's just like if I'm going to a regionals and I'm banking, my regionals finished on, is there some broken combo they missed, and like now we have an infinite block like control mirror in the finals. That's just kind of lame. So yeah, I I don't know what's going to happen. I would not put any money on it coming back for next year, unless they seriously want to put some effort into changing it.
All right, Nick. Last one. I know you play Expanded a lot. I've seen your post. What's your thoughts?
I play a lot of Expanded. This kind of holds near and dear to my heart. I actually didn't realize that there was no Expanded regionals this year. I didn't realize that it was all standard, so that's news to me. But yeah, honestly, I could see a possible rotation, just like with how PTCG Live is, and it's only Sun Moon on. I could see that being a real possibility. I actually think Expanded is a really fun format. I think it's really cool. There's a lot of diversity, and I think they've been pretty good about keeping up with bans that for things that are very problematic. I do think that a rotation would kind of give us a fresh view of it, because obviously right now Expanded is a lot of decks that play Battle Compressor and VS Seekers, and like that's a very popular engine, and it's like almost every deck plays that. So, you know, if you rotate Sun Moon on, you lose Battle Compressor and VS Seeker, which is a big thing. And I think you would end up with a pretty interesting format. I want to see Expanded come back. Before Brilliant Stars came out, Standard was it just felt absolutely terrible to play, and it was not exciting to play. So I looked forward to building Expanded decks and finding all the cool combos that are still out there. But yeah, so I really hope they don't do away with it. I think they have to have some other format out there besides Standard that's like an official format. So I think they'll probably stick with Expanded, but I think no matter what, there's going to be another format besides Standard.
Yeah, you're talking about banning cards, and the number one card that comes to mind is Battle Compressor. Like, that's the one card I think we deserve a ban on. But...
How are we going to play our V Union decks in Expanded without Battle Compressor?
Well, I think
enabling diversity.
I think if there was Expanded sanctioned events and V Unions were actually like popular and really good in Expanded, there would have been a Battle Compressor ban. But from my experience, V Unions are actually not that good in Expanded, even with Battle Compressor. Like Pikachu V Union is like okay because you can like sometimes get lucky and get T1 150 item lock, and Greninja V Union can be cute because if your opponent doesn't play around it, and it's like okay, wipe your bench out. But in retrospect, I don't think. Sadly, I thought V Unions would cause Battle Compressor to get banned, but I don't think that's happening.
I thought it was going to get banned until I played V Union for the first time, and my V Union died, and I tried to bring it back to life the second time, and PTC just said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not that good anymore."
That's the big thing.
Yeah. I was like, "Well, okay. Talonflame V Union's not a deck anymore." So, all right. But yeah, that's all I have that I know of. I guess it's time for me to sell my tropical beaches because Expanded is not going to be a thing anymore. We all agree on that. So,
They're good in GLC though. You can keep them for that.
Keep one.
Yeah, just one. You got to keep one.
I can proxy the tropical beach.
You can play the World Championship version if you want.
I'm just playing.
Everyone sell your tropical beach. It's cheap. Sell now.
Yeah, sell now.
The moment that they announce an Expanded regionals again, though, like Beach is gonna take off again.
Oh, for sure.
Oh yeah.
All right.
I want to see banned.
Unless they rotate black and white out because it's a black and white promo.
Oh, it's true. It's true. All right. Does anybody else want to add anything before we say our closing goodbyes or anything else? Anything I missed that they know of? Or
I mean, the event's in a week. If you're not sure what to play yet, probably play Mew. Is what I'm gonna leave you with.
There we go. Sounds good. All right. Just gonna go around the room one more time. You can say, shout outs or anything. So we'll start off with Kevin.
Shout outs. It's been a while since I've done this. I guess, Full Grip Games, that's the store I kind of buy all my cards from and hang out at. So they've been great. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything else besides that. I don't do anything with Pokemon anymore besides I'm going to regionals now. Yeah.
There you go. How about you, Nick?
I guess just make sure to check out my Metafy page, metafy.gg/@Phyclone. I offer great coaching. I'm working to be a teacher, so like I know how to teach people, and I have some very competitive prices. So if you're looking to get some preparation for the upcoming IRL season, make sure to go book a session with me there.
There you go. How about you, Evan? Any shout outs?
Shout out to the team I'm on, Synthwave Mafia. Everybody's kind of been popping off on online events recently. I usually post deck lists and stuff on my Twitter page. Just check that out. I'll be posting stuff for the upcoming regionals too.
There you go. All right, and last night, Cyrus, any shout outs?
Yeah, so I mean, my sponsor, Atlas Collectibles, I work there too. You know, it's a great store. I think their prices are really good. I'd also like to direct people to my coaching. I also offer like pretty much the cheapest rate anyone offers. At Cyrus Davis TCG on Twitter, you can find me there. You can also just send me a friend request on Facebook. That's pretty much it.
There we go. And what I'll do too is I'll link everybody's Twitters down below because I know we all have the Twitters, and you can go follow them all, and you can go bug them with questions. Don't ask me questions because I don't know what the play is for Salt Lake City. I've already had people ask me. My answer every time is Entei with Charizard. Go crazy, play that deck, have fun. But yeah, guys, I appreciate everybody coming on to do this. If you're listening, thank you so much for listening. Good luck this weekend. Yeah, guys. Alrighty.